So guys, welcome to the show today. My name is Tai Zen. We are a Bitcoin and crypto trading and investing channel. And one of the things that we like to do is bring guests on our channel and share some of the information. And one of the things that we do that's slightly different, or we try to do different, is that we try to present the facts from the opinions and be able to differentiate the two, okay? So today, guys, we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Matt Hamilton joining us from Europe. Say hello, Matt.
Hiya. How are you doing?
Okay. To clear up the quote-unquote rewind the blockchain tweet that I put out, right? And so I appreciated that, Dr. T at XRP Trump. Okay, because one of the things that we do on our channel is that we always try to, if we have wrong information, we try to get it cleaned up. And Dr. T suggested that I talk to Matt Hamilton here, to someone that has actually worked on the XRP or the Ripple blockchain. And we'll get into that in a minute to eliminate the confusion. And so that's how we ended up here in this broadcast today. So that, but before we get started, Matt, could you talk about a little bit about your background? Are you a software engineer, trader, investor? What is your background so that our audience knows what's basically your credentials? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, my background is a software engineer. I work for a large, well-known software company. But in my sort of personal, I guess, sort of side project is investing in cryptocurrency, which I kind of got into maybe about, like 9-10 months ago. Via a colleague at my previous company that I ran. Yeah, so I kind of got into writing as an experiment, writing a crypto trading bot against the XRP ledger. And lo and behold, it actually started working and started making some money. So I kind of got further and further down this sort of crypto rabbit hole and started learning a lot more. So yeah, I'm a software developer, but I've got an interest in sort of trading in that. I've just recently completed a fintech course at Oxford University on the basis of that, and working on a sort of a side project at the moment for a project to do with XRP in the UK.
Okay, so but basically your background is in software engineering, and so you're capable of understanding and reading and writing some of the blockchain code that is on the market right now, right?
Yeah.
So you talk about the Ripple blockchain, right? So let's just real quick, let's just lay out some of the facts before we start laying out the opinions of your opinions or my opinions, so that our viewers know. Okay, so a lot of people say that the first thing that the accusation against Ripple is that it is not a blockchain. Okay. So real quick, like the Bitcoin blockchain, and when they say it's not a blockchain, I think they're comparing it, most people are comparing it to Bitcoin, right, which is the first blockchain that on the planet. And so when you're talking about Ripple, Bitcoin is able to, whenever two transactions happen between two people, the Bitcoin blockchain is able to timestamp. It's a timestamping technology where it timestamps which one occurred first, the sequence of transactions, the sequence of events, which one happened first, which one happened second, and then it also validates if the amount of the transaction is accurate or not, right? Yep. So that's just a quick, what do you call that? Summary of the Bitcoin blockchain, is that it's a ledger technology, a public ledger technology, where it allows everyone to see when each transaction was happened. So it timestamps it, and then it also validates and lets everyone know if the amount of that transaction is accurate or not. Okay, so could you talk about what is the difference between the Ripple blockchain versus the Bitcoin blockchain? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, actually, what you just described there is an almost exact explanation of what the XRP ledger is as well, right? So the XRP ledger, very similar. You have these blocks that they call ledgers. Within there, you have a number of transactions, and each block or each ledger is digitally signed, and the signature is then included in the next block that is created, so that you have this chain of ledgers, and you can go back in time and look at them, and you can prove that transaction happened at that particular point in time, right? That's exactly the same. So the only real difference between the two is how you deal with what's called the double spend problem, which is when, if I have, whatever, 10 Bitcoin, 10 XRP, $10, whatever, in my pocket, in a physical world, if I give that $10 to you, I can't now give it to somebody else because I've given it to you.
Agreed.
In a digital world, I can copy that $10 because it's just bits and I can give it to multiple people, right? In a centralized database, you have one arbiter that can say, okay, you've spent that once, you can't spend it a second time. In a distributed world, so with Bitcoin, with XRP Ledger and the others, you need a way to deal with that.
So real quick, so that for our audience, because we have people that English is not their first language and they're listening to this, when you say that it has an arbiter, right?
Yeah.
That means just a person in control of it, correct?
Yeah. A central authority in control. So with a regular bank, they have a database somewhere in a data center that it has a database that has a record that says you have $10 in your bank account.
Okay.
You make a transaction, $10 is deducted from that bank account. You now have zero. If you make a second transaction, it goes, nope, sorry, you've got no money left. You can't make that transaction. Now, with a distributed ledger like XRP or like Bitcoin, there's no one central authority, right? So how do you deal with making sure that I don't spend that $10 twice? Now, in Bitcoin, they have this process called mining. And what happens is you basically try and solve a puzzle, mathematical puzzle, and you get elected effectively a temporary leader that for 10 minutes can basically say which transactions are valid. With the XRP ledger, it takes a different approach in that problem is really easy to solve if you can decide which order the transactions happened in. If you can agree that which order the transactions happen in, then you can agree the first transaction is valid and the second transaction is then invalid because you've spent all your money, right?
Okay, so pause right there real quick. Who makes that decision? Because in the Bitcoin blockchain, right, you have these miners, these people who volunteer their computers that are called miners, and what they or they process or mine Bitcoin transactions. And what they do is these miners basically they process Bitcoin transactions and they validate to make sure they're the ones validating it. They're volunteering their computers to validate the transactions in the network. So who is the person, the individual, or the entity, or who is doing the validation in Ripple?
So on the XRP ledger, the validation is done, it's distributed and by a number of nodes called validator nodes. Now the name validator is slightly misleading because actually all nodes on the XRP ledger, and there's hundreds of nodes on the ledger, run by all sorts of people. It's a common misconception that it's just Ripple, the company, that run them, but there's hundreds of nodes run by all different individuals. I run one myself. And every node validates that the transaction is valid, is correct. But you have a certain number of nodes that you as a node operator, you say you are going to trust to come to consensus as to the order of transactions. And so basically I choose who I wish to trust. So I can say, and the idea being is that I don't have to trust each of those individuals. I just have to trust that they're not going to collude. So as an example, say I chose Microsoft, Apple, the Linux Foundation, and Wikipedia as 4 different entities, right? You don't need to trust every one of those entities. There might be 1 or 2 you don't trust, but you can probably trust that the 4 of them are never going to agree to defraud you, right? Because that means all 4 of them have to agree that they're going to be bad. And
who is allowed to become a validator?
Anybody.
Like, can I volunteer my computer and be a validator on the Ripple blockchain?
Yes, anybody can be a validator. So you can run a validator if you want. There's no permission needed, nothing. You can run a validator. The difference being, though, is if you run a validator, I have to, on my node, say I will trust you to participate in the consensus protocol.
So you're saying that the company Ripple are the ones that write the code for the XRP blockchain, but they don't have control of it. Anyone can use the XRP blockchain. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. In the same way that, say, Blockstream write software for the Bitcoin network, for instance, or the Ethereum Alliance writes software for the Ethereum network, it's the same sort of thing. So Ripple writes software for the XRP ledger.
Okay, so let's just say that you are capable of writing code for the Ripple, for the XRP blockchain, right? Are you allowed to submit your code to the XRP blockchain?
Yeah, so the XRP ledger is open source. It's on GitHub. I could write an amendment or a modification or a change or an improvement or fix a bug or whatever. And in the same way as most open source projects, I can then submit a pull request to them, or I could just run it myself. I can just in the same way with the Bitcoin code, I could completely write my own Bitcoin client if I wanted to and run that. Anybody can run whatever code they want.
So where is this myth? Because see, okay, I'm glad you clarified that, because I've thought in the past that only the company Ripple is allowed to write new code for the XRP blockchain because they own the XRP blockchain. And you're saying that anyone can contribute. The XRP blockchain is open source, and any computer programmer can contribute code to it.
Yeah. If I wanted to right now, I could write a complete ground up implementation of the Ripple D, the Ripple client. In a completely my own programming language, whatever. I could completely write that from scratch and run it on the network.
So
right?
so where is this information, or I don't know if I call it myth or information or conspiracy theory, that only the Ripple company can update the software, the XRP software, or the XRP blockchain? Where is that coming from? Or so how can our viewers that's watching this right now know? How would they validate that, or your statement that Ripple company does not control and own the XRP blockchain?
They could go to GitHub and download the client and change the code themselves if they wanted to. If they've got the technical ability, they can go and do that. That's the only ultimate way in which they could actually validate what I'm saying, is to go ahead and do it themselves, or get a third party or trusted third party they want to go and do that themselves. In the same way that you tell me that this can happen on Bitcoin. Well, how do I know that? Well, the only way I could really know that is to go and download the Bitcoin software and have a look at it. Where this kind of this myth started from, I don't know. I could hazard a guess at there's certain kind of stories in the community about various nefarious behavior that may have resulted in this. And I think there's just general confusion that people don't get the distinction between Ripple, the company, and XRP, the ledger. And it's one of those things where on the internet, it's so much easier to spread misinformation than it is to correct it, right? Misinformation goes so much faster. You can say one thing and then that can just propagate, and it's so much harder to kind of refute it the whole time.